Did JB Bickerstaff reveal what the Detroit Pistons starting five is going to be this upcoming season at Media Day? Do we have an idea of what to watch for the Pistons starting lineup in preseason? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first list of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. You'll hear a little bit more about FanDuel later. In today's episode, I want to talk more about some things we heard from Media Day. The Pistons did have their first, official practice of the 2024-2025 season today, but not much news. We saw, a clip of Ausar Thompson's outside jump shot. I don't think that's worth, really diving into right now. So we didn't get really much from the practice. So I want to talk about more that we heard from Media Day, which includes, do we already know what the starting five is going to be? What they said about the use of Jaden Ivey, and whether this season win-loss record should matter at all for the fans, for the Pistons. You'll see what I mean by that when we get there. But what I want to start off with is, do we already know what the Pistons starting lineup is? Do we have an idea of what the Pistons starting lineup is going to be because of what was said at Media Day? And JB Bickerstaff was asked a question at Media Day about, what do you like most about this roster? What is it about this roster that intrigues you the most? And he went out of his way to say he's really looking forward to running a lineup. Now, this wasn't the only thing he said. He said other things that he liked from this team. He mentioned Jalen Duren. He mentioned Isaiah Stewart, the front court. He mentioned a few things, but he went out of his way to also mention he's excited to play Cade Cunningham with a bunch of 6'6", 6'7" dudes that can space the floor and are versatile defensively, and you can run pick and rolls. He mentioned that out of his own mouth without being prompted to do it. Along with that news, obviously at the beginning of the Media Day, we got sad news, tough news about Ausar Thompson that he is not yet ready to participate in training camp. He hasn't been cleared, it seems like, by the league. We don't know anything else past that. I've said that in the last episode. Trajan didn't really speak on it. All he gave us was he's not cleared through the league, and that's all he can say. So we don't know when Ausar Thompson is going to be back. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's going to be long until he comes back, but we really just don't know when he's going to come back. So as of right now, I'm going to talk as if he's not around, because we don't know when Ausar is going to come back. We have no clue. We don't know when they're going to clear him. We don't know anything about the timeline at all. So I'm just going to assume that he's not here. So if you take Ausar Thompson out the lineup and out the possibility of being in the starting lineup, and then you combine that with the words that you heard from JP Bickerstaff about the excitement around having 6'6", 6'7" guys around Cade to space the floor to the maximum capabilities, it makes me feel like they may go the route of Cade Cunningham, Malik Beasley, Simone Fontecchio, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren as their starting lineup. Or some kind of spacing equivalent to that, whether it be Cade and Malik, or for some odd reason it would be Cade and THJ. I don't think that would be the case, but you get the idea. It's going to be Cade, 3 shooters, and a lobster, and Jalen Duren. I think that's what it was hinted at during Media Day, at least in my opinion. And it sounds like we're definitely going to at least get to see that lineup throughout preseason and throughout the regular season. Again, whether THJ's in for Malik or whatever, that seems like the lineup, the type of lineup that JB's really excited to utilize on the court. And also, they talked about Jaden Ivey a little bit, and we'll get to that later in the second segment. But I think some of the comments they had about Jaden Ivey as well kind of hint at this as well, that I think it's just more likely that he's going to be coming off the bench as the backup point guard for the Pistons. It just seems that's the vibe I got from media day, but maybe, who knows? Maybe just a bunch of coach speak. And maybe just a bunch of, we're just trying to get out of this press conference without revealing too much, or we're just trying to get out of here, or whatever. So don't want to read too crazy into it, but if we're going to piece some stuff together, at least in my opinion, it seems like they're going to try to go the most, especially if Ausar is not ready. If Ausar is ready, I could see that maybe changing. But again, I'm operating under the understanding that Ausar is not going to be around. So I think you're probably going to see a lineup that includes Cade, Jalen Duren with a bunch of spacing around them. And then you'll see Jaden Ivey play off the bench with THJ. He'll lead that unit with THJ, Isaiah Stewart. Whether it depends how they want to craft their rotation. When you want to talk about like what would the bench lineup be? That has been a lot of talk in the Pistons community, just like what's the 5-man bench unit. I want to say this real quickly. Other NBA teams don't run 5 out, 5 in. Like, I know that was something Monty did this past season, but that's why Monty's gone. So, like, Monty's gone for a reason. Like, teams don't just sub 5 players out and put 5 bench players into the game. So, I'm going to assume that the likelihood of the Pistons maybe running an 8 or 9-man rotation is incredibly possible. So, what that would mean, maybe Ivy runs the bench unit and the guys coming off the bench is Ivy, Stu, and with Ausar Thompson out, maybe even if Ausar Thompson is still out when the regular season starts, maybe Bobby Klintman gets a chance. Maybe why is this name Ron Holland? I don't know why his name slipped my mind for a minute, but Ron Holland gets a chance in the start or into the bench lineup. Maybe they play Ivy and Sasser together with a Ron Holland and Bobby Klintman, or maybe they run a 9-man rotation that features Ivy, Stu, maybe a Sasser. I think Sasser probably. I'm starting to think that Sasser may get minutes at the off-guard position, depending on how they go about their starting lineup. We'll talk about that at a later time. But I think they're going to run a 9-man rotation. I'd be shocked if they ran 10-man rotation and just played 5 out, 5 in. I'd be shocked if that was the case. Maybe in preseason, but definitely not in the regular season. I'd be shocked. And just from the comments that we heard, I think they're going to run a spaced out lineup. And the reason why, again, for why Jaden Ivey wouldn't be in that starting lineup for 2 reasons. One, it sounds like we'll get to it a little later with some of the comments they had, but if you want to give Cade the utmost spacing, Malik Beasley is probably the best shooter, either one or two best shooter on the team, and you want to have him in the lineup. That's one. And 2, to kind of preview what's going to come up and what they said about Jaden Ivey. There was some talk about giving him his own unit to run during media day as well. So if you want to do that, and then you also want to give Cade Cunningham the utmost spacing possible in the starting lineup, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Just bring Ivy off the bench. You don't have a veteran backup point guard. They asked Trajan about, potentially getting a veteran backup point guard. He kind of dodged it, didn't really address it. Seems like they're not really too concerned about it. They don't really want one. So it seems like they are plugging Jaden Ivey at that spot. They want to give him, we'll talk about coming up, but they want to give him his own lineup to run. And along with, obviously, at times playing next to Cade, but giving him his own lineup to run seems to be a goal of theirs as well. And they also want to give Cade the utmost spacing possible in the starting lineup. So you can do both those things by just playing Jaden Ivey at the position that they don't have right now, which is what a lot of us have speculated since free agency when they never signed a backup point guard. So I think, did they reveal the exact players in their starting lineup? Maybe not. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe THJ gets thrown in there. Who knows what it is? If it's THA or Malik Beasley, but I do think there was a hint at you may see Cade, Jalen Duren with just shooters all around them starting out the gate. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. Would you be a fan of that starting lineup? Do you believe, based off the clips and quotes that you've seen from media day, that was something that they were hinting at, specifically JB Bickerstaff when he was asked about it? And how would you feel, obviously, if that was the starting lineup and what the kind of gives you an idea of what the rotation would kind of look like. So let me know again in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, I want to talk about what JB and Trajan Langdon mentioned about Jaden Ivey. Specifically, JB had a really insightful clip that I want to play for you guys about Jaden Ivey that I completely agree with. We'll talk about that when we come back. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I've told you guys this many of times. A few years ago when betting became legal in Michigan, I didn't know where to go, didn't know what to try out, didn't know anything about it. I tried out FanDuel, I have not turned back since. Not only is it super self-explanatory, super easy to use, most importantly, it's super fun to use. And again, today you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. There's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so there were actually two clips I wanted to play in regards to Jaden Ivey that I recorded from Media Day. But in an effort to not have 5 straight minutes of just clips from Media Day playing on the podcast, that's not something I want to do. It's not something I assume my bosses would like. I don't think it's something you guys probably would like. If you guys want to see the clips, you guys can go find them on my Twitter at Kuka Hill, both from Trajan and JB. Excuse me. But there is just a minute 30 clip I want to play from JB Bickerstaff, and then we'll dive into some of the other things said about Jaden Ivey and his use this upcoming season. And the question here was, have you gotten to speak with Jaden Ivey about what his role is going to be this upcoming season for the team? How's he feeling? What do you think about his role, etc.? And this is what JB Bickerstaff had to say. Let's go ahead and move that out the way real quick. All right, we're going to go ahead and play that, and then we'll come back afterwards, and I'll give you guys my thoughts.
And, that's something that you'll see is commonplace. Like, we spend a ton of time with the guys, not just on the court, but having conversations with them so that, things don't get too big, right? If we go 3 weeks without talking to a guy, so much has happened that it's kind of hard to, digest all of it at once. So we try our best, to have conversations with guys all the time. And the conversation with J.I. is, we're here to help him as best we possibly can. We believe that there is a lot there and that he has a high ceiling. And it's our job to figure out how we put him in positions to be successful. What we believe in is putting guys in positions of strength. And I know a lot of times as guys go through development, they spend so much time working on their weaknesses. And if they're not having success at their weaknesses, it impacts their confidence, which then ultimately impacts the things that they do well. So our focus is, let's put guys in positions of strength, give them that confidence, give them that belief. And then, on the side, when we're doing our pre-practice work, our post-practice work, when guys come back at night, like that's where we really, really focus in on things that they need to improve on so that when they get to it in the game, they have belief and confidence in it. Because, to me, that's the difference, is the belief in the ability when you're out there on the floor and the mindset of being confident that lets these guys be, the players that we believe they're capable of. And early. Yeah, we've talked.
All right, so I really enjoyed hearing that from JB for a few reasons. I guess let me tell you why I enjoyed hearing that from him before we dive into the Ivy aspect of it real quickly. And trust me, we'll get to Ivy. I want to hit on this real quickly. JB wasn't the only one to reference this kind of thing. Malik Beasley also talked about this kind of thing at the end of Media Day when he came up. And for those of you guys who have been loyal listeners of the podcast over the last, maybe last 2 years, going back to Sadiq Bey's second season in the NBA, what JB just said should give a lot of fans, hope and reason for optimism, because that's something the Pistons have not done correctly at all during this rebuild. And something I've talked about over and over and over again. The idea that JB just brought up, that you have these players working on their weaknesses in live game. When you have these players doing a bunch of different things just because they're development, and you're like, you know what, they're young. You're trying to lose anyways. Let them try to do whatever they want. That's not how you develop guys. That's how guys end up stunting their development. And I'm so happy JB brought this up. Malik Beasley also brought this up at the end of media day as well. He talked about how, someone asked him, what's one of your goals that you're going to say to the young guys and how to get better, etc. And he went into a really thought out answer where he spoke about how, when I start out in the league, you really need to start out, trying to be great at one thing before you move on to the next thing. You don't need to be trying to add all these different skills at once. He spoke about the beginning of his career. He wanted to be at least, I think he said, a 45% corner three-point shooter, or 40%. He said once he got there, okay, I feel comfortable about that. I think I'm that good of a shooter there. Now I'm going to work on off-ball movement threes. Okay, I feel comfortable there. Okay, now I'm going to work on off-the-dribble threes. Now I'm going to work on coming off screen type of threes. Instead of trying to, I want to be a corner shooter. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all that all at once. And now I'm not good at any one thing because I'm trying to be good at everything. And what JB just spoke about right there, where putting guys in a position to succeed, putting guys where they are best at, and then in practice time, in off-season time, and when you're working with your development team, working on those weaknesses, okay, that's the time for that. But like he said, I think the best point he mentioned is that when you have guys, I think Pistons fans watch this happen with Saddiq Bey. I think it happened with a lot of players, to be honest. But Saddiq Bey, I think, is the most common or most thought of one. Saddiq Bey right out the gate was a lights-out shooter. People thought eventually he'd be a 3-and-D type of guy. And then instantly he started doing ISO dribble moves. He started trying to become this, people wanted him to be Paul George. People wanted him to be Chris Middleton. All of a sudden we started to see him try to be an ISO scorer, demand post-ups, before he even became an excellent three-point shooter, before he even worked on off-ball movement threes, before he even worked on coming off screen off-ball threes, corner three-point shooting. I saw a stat the other day that he was one of the worst three-point shooters from the corner on his volume this past season. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you're a losing team and you just say, you know what, you're losing anyways, just do whatever you want. And when you do that, it affects your confidence. It affects your mindset. And now the things that you were once confident about, the things you once were a strength of yours that you thought were a strength you felt real confident about, now the other things that you're failing at, now you don't even feel as confident in your one strength. Now you don't even have your strength anymore. So I think that 100% is something I've been waiting to hear from the Pistons for years, going back 4 years since they started this rebuild, because it's something I think they've desperately or badly fumbled in their development. And I think now to tie this all into Jaden Ivey, I think this really, to be honest, I think that really affects Ivey this past season too, where he was put in a lot of different situations. He was yanked around, whether it be starting lineup to the bench lineup, whether it was sixth man or seventh man off the bench, whether it was closing, not closing, 30 minutes or 20 minutes. He was yanked around all kinds of different ways. He was asked to do so many different things for the team, be a great spot up shooter. He was asked to, carry some of the load on the coming off the bench. He was asked to do a lot of different things. So I think with Jaden Ivey this upcoming year, you're going to see JB try, at least what it seems like, and I hope, try not to put as much pressure and as much stuff on Jaden Ivey's plate so he can get back to being great at the things he's great at before you start trying to get him to do these other things. Like, for example, something I've spent a lot of time on the podcast talking about. Jaden Ivey is an absolutely electric athlete. One of the quickest players in the entire NBA. He's going to draw fouls just like that because guys can't beat him to his spot. When he's driving, you're going to bump him off his spot. You're going to foul him because he's going to get to that spot before you can shuffle your feet to. We've seen it over and over again. He's an insane athlete. He gets to the rim whenever he wants. He's an instant paint touch. However, through 2 seasons in his career, he has not been a good finisher at all. I believe this past season he was in the 17th percentile at the rim. He's not a good finisher. So how about instead of asking Jaden Ivey to be, all these other things, how about we just focus on, okay, let's give Jaden Ivey a spaced out lineup to where he's getting the easiest looks at the rim and tell him, Ivey, we want you to use your athleticism, your ability to be an instant paint touch, your ability to get to the rim. We want you to focus on just finishing at the rim, getting to the basket, and making the right decisions when you get to the basket. If he's able to simply improve on that, he's instantly a way better basketball player. And that's without becoming a consistent three-point shooter. That's without becoming a consistent defender. Just work on one thing at a time. Become great, have an elite skill before you start trying to do all these other things. So I was really happy to hear that from JB. I think that's one of the main things you have to hit on in development. I think that's something the Pistons have absolutely failed with multiple players, with almost every player they've been trying to develop over the last 4 years. I think they've done it with almost all of them. Especially, here's another person we'll shout out here, Jalen Duren, who shout out the podcast. Appreciate you, JD, if you're listening to the podcast. I feel it. Jalen Duren, I spoke about this at the back end of last season. Just because the team was losing, now all of a sudden you saw Monty Williams allow Jalen Duren to do anything in the half court. So, for example, like, is Jalen Duren really good with the ball in his hands as a center to create room for himself and get to the lane and get to the basket and score for himself off the DHOs and coming from the high post? He is, yes. But when you just give him a free leash and you just say, you know what, who cares? Just do whatever you want. We're losing anyways. Now we started to see the JD pull up mid-rangers that were bad misses, or we started to see him take some bad shots that resulted in basic turnovers. And not only were they actual turnovers, but the shots led to might as well been turnovers. And that's what happened. You saw the same thing happen in the early development of Andre Drummond's career, where if you don't bring guys in, if you don't try to limit what they do, you can give them freedom. And JB actually said this too. He said you can give them freedom, but it has to be this isn't exact words, I'm basically summarizing, but calculated freedom. You don't want to let them just do whatever, and whatever they, if they mess up, they start building bad habits, who cares? You're losing anyways. Because that helps nobody. It doesn't help anybody. So I know I went on a bit of a rant about all this, but I really do think this was one of the most important things JB said at the press conference. You have to have controlled freedom, calculated freedom with your players, and you need to put them in positions that are best for themselves. Don't put them in positions that are going to affect them and make them worse, especially when they are already struggling with their confidence and struggling with their development. All you're doing is destroying their confidence, and you're ruining their development. Put them in their strengths and work on things slowly. Build up one thing at a time. There's no need to try to throw everything at one player. So I really like hearing that from JB. I went for a little bit. I wanted to talk about their use of Jaden Ivey, but this segment kind of turned into something else. To quickly hit on the Jaden Ivey's, their use of Jaden Ivey. You just heard what JP said. Trajan was asked earlier in the media day about how they want to use Jaden Ivey. And he said he thought that Jaden Ivey can be used playing with Cade, but also they're really excited to see him run his own lineup. They think he can be good off ball, but they really think he could also be good on ball, creating for others, using his playmaking, his ability to get to the basket. So they kept hinting at his ability to run his own lineup, kept hinting at the fact of being, trying to get that playmaking out of him. So along the comments, along with the fact that just haven't gotten a backup point guard, I think all signs are just pointing at Jaden Ivey being that backup point guard. And I feel like they believe that's putting him in a position to succeed, in position to use his strengths. Now, whether you agree with that being the best spot for him, you can talk about that amongst yourselves, but it seems like that's where they believe his best utilization is at, and where he's going to be allowed to use his strengths the most at. And I think I understand where that's coming from as well. Giving him a spaced out lineup, giving him his own lineup to run where he's not having to defer to Cade. He's able to run the show. He has a spaced out lineup. He's able to get to the basket whenever he wants, and he's able to try to develop that decision-making when he gets to the basket and kicking out to his teammates. So I think that's great. We'll see what it is, though, for sure, when preseason starts and when the regular season starts. But let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about what JP said and what we had to talk about right here, man. I really liked hearing this from JP. I think this is a really good sign for the Detroit Pistons development of their young core. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. When we come back, I want to talk about, there was a comment from Trajan Langdon about, they asked Trajan, one of the media members, what's the goal for this upcoming season? How many wins should this team have this upcoming season? And I saw that his answer did not make many fans happy. We'll talk about what his answer was when we come back. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. real quickly, I want to just, before we hit on the win-loss comments, if you guys want to be a part of the live recording, I've been recording a lot of these podcasts live every single day over the last, I'd say, week and a half. So if you want to be a part of the live recording and be in the live chat, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. You'll be notified anytime I go live and record. You can talk in the chat. You can interact with everybody. So go ahead and do that. This is something I just want to hit on this real quick because there's been a few people in the live chat over the last few days that have been saying this it's been the same few people. And I just want to hit on it real quick. The fact that there's even a few people in the Pistons fan base that feels this way is honestly insane to me and just crazy. But there are legit a few people in the community that just want Cade to hurry up and be traded and hand the keys to Jane Ivey. And that's where you get like people turning against Jane Ivey when you start spewing insane stuff like that. When you start spewing that this team will finally be good when Cade Cunningham is traded for whatever pieces and we can finally give the keys to Jane Ivey. I mean, that's how you build like the Jane Ivey slant. That's how you get people to start talking down on Jane Ivey. When you start saying insane stuff like that, like, I mean, that's what you do it to yourself. So I just had to hit on that because I keep seeing that in the comments of the live recording the last few weeks from some fans. And the fact that this is an ID, I don't understand. I don't get it. Anyways, I want to move on from that. I just had to hit on it because I see a lot of it today as well. I'm just like, what are you watching? Like, why is that something we're even talking about? All right, so I want to talk about Trajan's response to whether the Pistons should be judging, basically, should they judge this season off of wins and losses? He was asked a few times, by the way, so I want to make this clear. Since I'm in the building a lot more now, I know a lot of fans over the last few years have voiced that they feel like, media members don't push back at things and don't try to get hard answers out of guys. Since I'm here, I can say from experience, or say since I was there, this was something he was asked multiple times about. Like there were follow-ups trying to get him to, maybe reveal like not necessarily just like a win goal or something, but like, the team has been losing. So, do you think fans are going to like to hear this? There were follow-ups to this. So if you don't like this answer, don't feel like people were just like, oh, he said that, whatever. Like people did follow up with it. So, but I want to play this clip real quickly from Trajan and his thoughts on whether the Detroit Pistons should be judging this season or measuring this season, I should say, off of wins and losses.
Yeah, I don't think the goal for us is wins and losses. Obviously, we want to win as many games as possible, but I think it's putting a group together that establishes a Detroit Pistons identity. And at some time of the season, we want to be able to say, and JB has reiterated this to our guys, that this is Detroit Pistons basketball. When we walk into arena, the other team's going to know exactly what we're going to bring, and they better be ready for it because we're going to come in and compete every night. So I think that's going to be incredibly important for our group. It's just the compete level that we have every day. And then, like I said, we have a lot of young guys. So getting a routine, instilling a process with our team, and creating environment again, and sustaining that environment that we're creating positivity of work and compete level. And that's not something that happens overnight. So for us, it's doing those things across the course of the season. Of course, myself and my staff will be assessing our players the whole time, but obviously not only assessing what they're doing, but how can we help them get better. So for us, it's just continue to build and hopefully be a better team in December than we are now, and a better team in March and April than we were in December.
And quick follow-up.
So I know that this answer that Trajan gave, I immediately saw on Twitter, immediately saw in the Pistons community that this upset a lot of people. That a lot of fans felt like, at least from what I've seen, a lot were like, we've heard the same thing for 4 years. We've heard the same thing for 4 years. This past season, we just watched the worst season in Pistons history. And now, again, going into year 5, we hear more of, well, we won't measure this season by wins and losses. Instead, we'll measure this season by improvement and the ability to fight inside of games and to simply be competitive. And as long as we're trying, that's a W. Like, I get it. I understand why fans do not like that answer. There was something else Trajan said that I thought was his worst answer so far as the Pistons president basketball operations. I won't say what that answer was, but I didn't really have too big of a problem with what he said here about wins and losses. And here's why. I've been saying it since like free agency, like judge them by their actions, not their words. Did the Pistons moves this past offseason scream they're trying to win games? Did the Pistons moves with the $60 million in cap space that they had, did those moves scream like someone that wanted to go, try to win more games? Like obviously they want to win more than 14, okay? But did the moves scream, we want to really be in the play-in? We want to push for the, the 9th seed. We really want to win 20 plus more games. Like, is that what those moves screamed in the offseason? No. They had $60 million plus in cap space, and they used a lot of it by taking THJ and a second-round pick. They used a lot of it going again to Tobias Harris, who's a fine player. He's a good player, but not, changing your fortunes. He's not, like, warping your team. And then they use the rest of it on Malik Beasley. Like, they didn't make many changes to the team. They didn't move on from anybody. They didn't move on from anyone a part of the young core. They brought in vets who are fine players, but not great ones. So, like, Trajan's words are matching his actions. This team, from the get-go, from the beginning of this offseason, it was clear, or not beginning of the offseason, but since Trajan took over, it's been clear that their goal is to they obviously want to be better than last year. They're not trying to win 14 games. Like, that's not what I'm saying. They want to win 20. Like, do they want to hit the over, basically? Like, do they want to win 24 or more games? Like, obviously, yes. I think they'd like to do that, okay? Like, but that's like the bare minimum. 24 games, like, that's not crazy. Like, that's just avoiding being the worst team in the league kind of stuff. So, obviously, they'd like to win more than 24 games. But outside of that, the goal for this season for them is to see young guys improve, like he mentioned, from October 1st to December, from December to January, from January to April, and from April to June. Like, that's what they want to see. They want to see guys improving as the year goes on. They want to see the team be competitive game or night in and night out, and they want to be playing. They want to be playing in games in March where they're not sitting guys due to injuries 30 games, 20 games before the season even ends. Like, that's where they want to get to. Is it 30 plus wins? No, like, that's not what their goal is. That's not what Trajan's making the mandate be. Ashton, look. Okay, so look, we are joined live by Ashton in the comments. Ashton, I'm going to tell you this real quickly, man, before I finish up the podcast. First of all, I've been going for like 30 minutes, man. You now say something. I gotta wrap up now. That's for a second. I'd advise of you to get out of the chat. Just I'd advise to sit this one out. Chat hasn't been too kind. I don't think you like some of the things chat's saying about Cade. Just sit this one out. All joking aside, though, yeah, I mean, like, Trajan's comments clearly and his actions say we want to be better than last year, but if we don't win 30 games, that's not our goal. Like, the goal is not that. We want to see these young guys get better. We want to see Jaden Ivey get better from October 1st to December, from December to January. We want to see JD get better from October to December. And if that translates to wins, great. Like, I think he even said during the quote, like, if we win games, great. Like, yeah, if wins come with it, that would be fantastic. But if you're just competing night in and night out and you're seeing Jaden Ivey get better and you're seeing Jalen Duren get better, you're seeing Ausar Thompson get better, I think that's all they really want to see, to be honest. And I understand why fans are upset by that. By that being, basically being admitted by the words now instead of just actions. By that being the goal for this season. It doesn't mean they won't make the play-in. Maybe that translates to them making the play-in. Maybe it does, but that's not the goal. That's not what they built this team this offseason to do. That's not what we have to do that or it's a failure. What they have to do in their minds is develop these young guys and figure out who needs to be here long-term and who doesn't. That's their mindset. That's their absolute goal that they want to figure out. And again, if winning comes with it, so be it. They'll be ecstatic. If not, let's just try not to be the worst team in the league, basically. You want to be honest, I low-key think that's just really what their goal is. Like, we just don't want to be the worst in the league. Like, we'd like to win more than 24 games. If we can win 25, 26 games, we feel great. Like, I think that's, like, truly, I think they would be, if they won 26 games and Ivy looked a little better as the season went on, and Duran looked a little better as the season went on, I think they would probably end the season feeling incredibly happy in the front office. I'm not going to lie to you. So, like, I think that's where we're at. Again, if that translates to play-in, maybe it does. Maybe they make such leaps, the young guys, that they make it to the play-in. Maybe that does happen, but that's simply just not the goal of the front office. It's not what they have to do. It's not what they're making happen, what they have to happen to consider the season a success. So we'll see what happens. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. I appreciate all of you guys. Again, if you want to be part of the live recording, part of the live chat, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel and turn on those notifications. You'll get notified anytime we go live at the channel. I appreciate all of you guys. Follow me over on Twitter at KukaHill. I've been streaming a lot more over on Twitch at KukaHill7. If you like video games, I'll be streaming over there as well. I'm about to make a backup channel as well, breaking down film for the Pistons, so stay tuned for that. But I appreciate all of you guys' support. Season starting up. We're just a few days away from preseason, just a few days away from the open practice. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be here for all of it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out.